Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. Today I'm filming my wrap up for the month of August. So before I get into my wrap up, I want to talk about the charity that I'm supporting this month, because I pledged that I would not only do my own work on education and signing petitions and sharing campaigns and things for Black Lives Matter and people of colour, but I also wanted to support a charity each month, specifically for that reason. And I wanted to talk about the charity in a monthly video so that it raises awareness and hopefully gets other people to donate to the charity as well. So the charity that I wanted to raise awareness of this month is called Move to Higher Ground, and it's a charity for Indigenous people of the Quileute tribe. And the reason that this came to my attention was that I was watching a video from Ashley on Bookish Realm, and Ashley has been rereading the Twilight series and talking about the problems that she has found in the series. And one of the things that she raised was that Jacob's tribe in the Twilight series is the Quileute tribe, and they are currently needing to raise a lot of money because they are living in a tsunami zone and they need to move to higher ground, hence the name of the charity, in order to try and especially to move their tribal school, which they say is the only school that they have to educate in the culture and the language of their people. And so Ashley made the point that as far as she knew, none of the money from the books was going to help this tribe, even though it was raising a huge amount of money, having a new book in the Twilight series coming out. So I am going to donate to that charity this month, or I have donated to the charity this month. I'm going to link the details in a flashing up here, and I'm also going to put them in the links down below, so if you can afford to donate anything or even just to share the information, then please do so. So in August I actually surprised myself and I read 8 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 8 books, which is a good month for me. So I'll start off. 2 of these are audiobooks, but I'm just going to do them in order that I read them. So the first book that I read was an audiobook, and that was Writers and Lovers by Lily King, and this was an absolutely fantastic start to the month because I loved this book. I heard about this from Emma from Drinking by My Shelf, and I liked the sound of it, so I added it to my list, and then I got it on Audible. So this is it's got romance in it, but it's not like a romance novel, and it follows the life of a woman in her, I think she's about 30, called Casey. And Casey is a writer. She's working on her first novel. Her mum has recently died and she has no money. She has loads of student debts. She's living in a tiny room which is rented off a family friend, and she works as a waitress, as many shifts as she can get because she's broke. And she also is writing, like she gets up really early in the morning to write, and she's just kind of living this life of writing and working. She's not really happy, but she's just kind of cruising along. And then she meets 2 men at roughly the same time. So one is Silas, who is a writer that she meets at a book launch, and he is sort of quite similar to her. And then she also meets this guy called Oscar, who is a successful writer. He is a widower and he has 2 boys. And she starts getting into the early stages of relationships with Silas and Oscar, and she has to decide what to do. This is not a kind of typical love triangle romance book. This is a literary book which is fantastically written. It is it's not super fast paced. I cared about the characters so much. I cared what Casey did so much. I really had like my favourite that I wanted her to stay with, and yeah, I liked the kind of the secondary characters in it. I just felt like this is a fantastic book. I can't wait to see what other Lily Kings I love, because she has written other books and I'm really looking forward to reading more by her. I gave this 5 stars, so I definitely recommend checking it out. The second book that I read, so this was a stereotypical romance book. So I heard about this one from Stephanie's, gosh, I'm really sorry, what's her channel called? A link to her channel. I can't remember the name of her channel, but Stephanie is awesome. She has a romance channel. She's really funny. And this book is called Quarantine and Chill by Kenya Wright. This book, so how I came about having this book was I put it on my wish list and I heard Stephanie talk about it because she raved about it, how much she loved it. And I went through on my Kindle, I asked my daughter to pick a couple of books off my wish list on my Kindle for me to read that month, and she straight away, as you can see by the cover, she straight away picked that one. I was like, that one, Mum. No idea why. So I read it in a day. It's a romance set in COVID time, so it's only just recently been written. It's about a male lead called Kamal, who is extremely wealthy, has his own business, and he comes home during lockdown has just been announced. He comes home and finds his girlfriend in bed with another man, and she says, please don't kick me out because I don't have anywhere to go. It's lockdown, I don't have any family here, I can't travel anywhere. So he says, I'm literally giving you a week and I want you out. And he gets his stuff and he takes it to his sister's apartment because his sister is away on honeymoon. What he doesn't know when he arrives at the sister's apartment is that her sister's best friend is staying there to dog sit for his sister. And they've known each other for a long time. They both really fancy each other, but they're like, this would be a super bad idea because, you know, it's too close. Like one is best friends with one's sister. And then obviously like they kind of like get it on over the week. And I gave it 2 stars. I didn't really enjoy it. The writing wasn't good. The plot, the tension didn't build enough for me. Like the tension was building and then it didn't build enough. I didn't think the sex scenes were that well written. And so it was a bit of a disappointment for me, really, especially because Stephanie had reviewed it so well. When I looked up Kenya Wright, she's written, I think it said 49 books in 7 years. The writing's not going to be great, is it? Because most people take a long time to work on each book. So, yeah, I won't be reading any more of her books, I'm afraid. The third book that I read was A Bellewether by Suzanna Kearsley. This one was, I've actually got this one still. Here we are. So this is a library book. I've had this since lockdown started. I've still got a few library books left and I'm slowly getting through them. So about the state of my nails, like, a few of my nails keep falling off and getting them done again tomorrow, so I have some missing. Anyhow, I loved Mariana by Susanna Kearsley. That was one of my books of the year last year, and so I was really looking forward to this book, and I was sadly disappointed by it. So this is about a museum curator called Charlie in present day, a female. She has moved to town and she's got this job as the curator, and she is looking into the lives of the family who used to live in the house which is now the museum. And so it goes back to the 1700s, and it goes back to the time of the Wild family, Lydia, who's one of the daughters, and they had to have some of the French and Canadians stay with them, who they were at war with. And the 2 French officers come and stay with the Wild family, and there's a romance between one of them and Lydia. And the sort of local legend has it that this ended tragically, and Charlie's trying to uncover the past and find out whether it did or not. So it goes back and forward in time, and there's a ghost in it, but it just didn't. Mariana was so much better for me than this one, and I gave it 3 stars, but I just felt like I didn't care enough about the characters. I didn't enjoy the one that was set in the past as much as I'd hoped, and I'm really sad to say it was a disappointment, but I would still read more Susanna Kearsley because it might just be that this one wasn't for me, and I love the rest of them as much as Mariana. The next one I read was a poetry collection by Mary Oliver, and this was 1,000 Mornings. So this is a collection of poetry about nature, and Mary Oliver just finds joy in like small things in the natural world, and she just obviously spends as much time as she can outdoors, and she writes these beautiful poems. My favourite poem was one about her dog called Percy, who had died, and yeah, it's a poem that goes on for 3 pages, but they're, like that. And it just captures the essence of a pet so well. And that one made me cry, and I read it a few times, and it was beautiful. I loved all the poems. It's one that I feel like with poetry collections, you don't just read them and put them down. You kind of read them and return to them as many times as you wish. And I will be returning this, and I'm looking forward to buying some more Mary Oliver, because I enjoyed this so much, and I gave it 5 stars. The next one that I read it on my Kindle, so I haven't got a copy to hand, was The Shadow King by Maaza Mengiste, which is longlisted for the Booker Prize at the moment. I don't even know how to start reviewing this book, because it was such a powerful book, such an amazing experience. This book is set in Ethiopia, and it's in the 1930s, just before the Second World War, when Mussolini decided to invade Ethiopia. And Italy had tried to invade Ethiopia a few years before and been defeated, and they're trying again. And so it's set, so the emperor is Haile Selassie, and the main character is called Hirut. She's a young teenage girl. Both of her parents have died, and she's gone to live with a guy and his family as a sort of a servant. And the man's wife doesn't appreciate her being there, and is quite jealous of her and treats her quite badly. And at one point in the story, the man sort of tries to rape her, and she attacks him and tries to run away, and then she gets treated worse by them as well. And so she's got quite a sad story anyway, a very sad story anyway. And then the war starts, and the man that she lives with is sort of like quite an important figure, and he's gathering the men from the village and training them as soldiers. And the wife and Hirut and the other women want to get involved in the fighting, and they're told, don't be ridiculous, like you can cook for us, you can look after the wounded soldiers, but you can't fight. And we follow this story, and we also follow a story of a couple of the Italians. So there's a man called Ettore, who is a photographer, a war photographer, and he works for a colonel who is really, really sick. When I say sick, I mean like he is vile. And he makes whatever's going on in the war, he makes Ettore photograph everything and send it back to Italy and send it back to the press, all the appalling things that they're doing in Ethiopia. So we follow Hirut and we follow Ettore as well. And the Italians, so they carry out chemical attacks on Ethiopia. They drop mustard gas from planes as they fly over. They contaminate their water supply. They have much more training, much more in the way of arms. They have machine guns and things, whereas the Ethiopians have really old kind of pistols which will only fire one shot at a time. But the Ethiopians have the geographical advantage because they can go up into the mountains, they can run down mountains barefoot. They're really nimble, whereas the Italians kind of really struggling with the terrain and everything. And so we're also having interspersed with this Haile Selassie, who is just doesn't know what to do in the situation. He's not leading, he's just spending most of his time listening to operas, and then he decides he's actually just going to flee to England and just leave his country because he doesn't know what to do or how to handle this situation. And so one of the most, like, this book has got like so many trigger warnings. Like, there's repeated rapes in this book, there's like torture, deaths, lynchings. It's just like, it's so hard to read. And there's bits, the worst bit is when the Italian commander comes up with this idea that how he's going to dispose of his Ethiopian prisoners is to build a prison on the edge of a cliff, and he basically throws the prisoners off this edge of the cliff, and they like plummet to their death. And so they all just keep being brought there to be chucked off a cliff, and Ettore has to keep photographing them as they jump off the cliff, and it's just like, to read it, like, it's gut-wrenching. It's absolutely sickening. And, you know, it made me like weep reading it because it was just so upsetting. And so, like, how number one, like, how does any human being do that to another human being? Number two, I just kept, you know, like, how dare they? They're invading another country. They have no right to be there whatsoever, the Italians. You know, how dare they even be in that country? Never mind be there, poison, torture, and kill the people who are there already. It's just, oh. So it's a punch to the gut, this book. Like, I think it's phenomenal. I said I had a chat with Kieran about this book, and he didn't feel the same as me about it, which is interesting. But I said I found it, in horror, I found it quite sort of similar to The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan. That's the only other book I can think of that given me that gut-wrenching horror that this book gave me. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. It's one of those books where 5 stars isn't enough. I would be thrilled if this won the Booker Prize. Yeah, I don't know how else to talk about it really, but you can probably tell like how powerful I thought it was. The next book that I read was another book from the long list on the Booker Prize, and it was Real Life by Brandon Taylor. This I listened to on audio. This is set in modern day at a university in the States, and it's set over the course of a single weekend, although it feels a lot longer than that. And it follows a guy called Wallace who is black, and he is the only black student studying biochemistry at this university. There's a small group of about 8 of them who are pals. He's the only black person in their group as well, and he is gay. He's from Alabama, and he has had a traumatic childhood of being sexually abused when he was about 9. So he sort of tends to sort of keep his distance from people because he just has trust issues, not surprisingly. And this book, so it basically follows Wallace, and over the weekend, like, it's always written from Wallace, you know, we're always with Wallace the whole time. And how do I describe this book? It's really hard. It's very literary. Wallace, I don't want to spoil really. So in fairly early on in the book, one of the other group of their friends called Miller is attracted to Wallace, and Miller sees himself as straight, and he starts seeing Wallace and having a relationship with Wallace. And Wallace finds this difficult because he has the sort of trauma that he's had in his early life, and he has issues of trust and things, and he lets himself be treated in a way that, you know, is not good enough because he has quite low self-esteem as well. Miller has issues with the relationship because he sees himself as straight and he doesn't quite understand what's happening. You hear more about both of their pasts as it goes on, and you also see all these daily interactions, and it doesn't talk. It's interesting how it handles Wallace being black, because it doesn't talk about it explicitly a lot, but there's all these undercurrents going on throughout the book. Like, there's a dinner party where there's one of the people at the dinner party is racist towards Wallace, and all of his white friends just literally do nothing at the time. They just sit there and they just listen, and then they're kind of quite keen to change the subject afterwards. And then they're like, oh, you know, after it's all finished, like later on after dinner party, they're all like, oh, we're really sorry about what happened, but nobody did anything at the time. And Also, there's things like Wallace in the lab is treated very differently to his white peers. He's talked down to. It's assumed that he hasn't got many prospects, that he has to be there, that he gets blamed for things that blatantly weren't his fault, and they said, oh, it must have been Wallace that did that. It obviously wasn't him, and he kind of sucks all this up, and he doesn't defend himself because I guess, again, he's kind of he has these issues of having been in the position where he was abused. And there's also just like, there's also stuff like Miller is asking for forgiveness after something happens, and Wallace is like, I can't grant you that absolution, I can't grant you that forgiveness. And they're talking about this incident, but they're really talking, it's really kind of metaphor for white fragility and white people wanting to be granted absolution by black people for the things that have happened to their, from their one race to another, and that, because it's got all these undercurrents running through it as well. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, because obviously I'm not doing an Own Voices review, and I don't want what I'm saying to cause any offence. This is how I perceived it. Obviously, I'm not an Own Voices reviewer, and I really want to read some interviews with the author to get his take on, those kind of scenarios in the book as well. So I gave this one 4 stars. Now, the only reason I knocked a star off, because the writing's phenomenal. The dialogue is second to none. The dialogue, you could imagine so much. This is exactly how the conversation went. Like, some books when you read them and you just think people just don't talk like that. This is like spot on. I just thought it was so well observed. So well written. Just amazing. I only knocked a star off because it is quite bleak and quite depressing. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but for my enjoyment level, I didn't enjoy this as much as if it had been a bit more hopeful. I again discussed this with Kieran on Instagram, and I really liked the ending and he didn't, and it was again just interesting to kind of discuss our different thoughts about it. I'll link Kieran's channel because he's reading the whole of the long list by the time the winner is announced, so I'll link his channel so you can read along if you wish. So that was, 4-star read for me. I definitely recommend it, and I'd be happy if it won. I still would. The next book that I read was called A Whole Life by Robert Seethaler, translated by Charlotte Collins. So this is about this is a very short book. It's set in about, gosh, I'm so terrible at remembering dates. It's when it must be around just before the First World War, because at one point he leaves to go to war. So, or maybe just before the Second World War. Gosh, I can't remember. First, I think. Anyhow, it's set in the mountains in Austria, in a very remote place, and it follows a character called Edgar. And he is kind of a man of few words. He's a very practical man. He likes working with his hands. He likes doing sort of heavy work. He loves the mountains. There's no electricity in their village. There's no transport really in and out of the village. He lives a solitary life. He was orphaned and given to quite a cruel family at a young age, but it's not particularly focused on that. And we just follow Edgar through his life. He meets a woman who he falls in love with, and I won't tell you what happens to their relationship. Do not read the synopses because it tells you what happens, and what happens doesn't happen quite late in the book, so I was kind of peed off about that. And it's a book about sort of nature and about how a landscape changes with modern living. So during the book, electricity and cable cars come, and with the cable cars come tourists like skiers, and it just sort of changes the dynamics of the village and the town and the landscape and what it's like to live and work there. It deals with like natural disasters like avalanches, and I thought it was very beautiful. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars again because I thought the writing was really good. I haven't read anything like it for as long as I can remember, and I'd recommend that one as well. And then what have I got next? the last book that I read this month was The Wisdom of Sundays by Oprah Winfrey. So this is how many tabs I put in the book. So as you can see, this book was one that was very special to me. You all know, anyone who's watched this channel for any length of time knows how much I love and adore Oprah. She's like my role model. She's made a measurable contribution to my life. Like, my life has just been influenced by her so much. She does a series on TV, but not in this country. But you can get the podcast on Superstore Sessions. So she does this show called Superstore Sunday, where she has a different guest on each week, and their focus is on spirituality. And these are excerpts from interviews from her guests. So they're set into different chapters. I don't know if there's a list of, So we have chapters on like awakening, intention, mindfulness, spiritual GPS, ego, forgiveness, broken open, grace and gratitude, fulfillment, love and connection. They're the chapters. And we have teachers in here who are some of my favourites, like Ian Levanzant, Gary Zukov, Eckhart Tolle, Caroline Mace, Elizabeth Gilbert, Ed Bacon. There's loads of my favourite teachers in here. And there's beautiful photography as well. So some of the pages are like this, with just a quote like that. Other pages, most of the pages, Michael Beckworth, most of the pages are like this. And I did so much underlining, tabbing, annotating about all the bits, because I will go back to this time and again. Like, I will say that there was one part in the book which resonated with me so deeply that I've been thinking about it non-stop ever since. And that is, I'm so grateful for that, because my education, my involvement during my lifetime is, my reason I'm here. And so anything that helps me in that evolution is precious. And this book, I remember listening to quite a lot of these. I've listened to a lot of the Superstore Sessions podcast, so some of these were definitely familiar to me. But I just find stuff like this, every time you read it, you glean something new. So I gave this 5 stars, and I will absolutely be returning to these again and again. I was just going to see if I could find any that just open that I've underlined. Okay, so this is just a quote that I really like. This is by Elie Wiesel, who was a prisoner in the Holocaust, and he's died now, but he I remember him being on Oprah in the 90s. So he says, whatever you do in life, remember, think higher and feel deeper. Life is not a fist. Life is an open hand waiting for some other hand to enter it in friendship. Ultimately, the answers are so simple, not simplistic, but so simple. I thought that was so beautiful, and definitely one we could all relate to right now. So yeah, that was The Wisdom of Sundays, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody. So yeah, that was all the books that I read this month. So 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 8 were 5-star reads, so that was a good month. This has been quite a long wrap up, so sorry about that. I'm thinking of, I don't know whether I will, so I guess it depends on my time and everything like that, but I'm thinking of doing like weekly wrap ups and sort of catch ups like a lot of people do, where they say what they're reading at the moment, what they've finished that week. Thinking of doing that, so we'll see how it goes. I may not. So I'm just watching. There's some little cute baby pigeons on the garden that I'm just watching. So anyway, if you've read or plan to read any of those books, please let me know your thoughts. And I'm really happy to hear what you've read and enjoyed this month. I'll link to Stephanie's channel and Kieran's channel down below. And interested to hear any comments that you have. Have a lovely week, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.